Hey, I'm Kyle, and you're watching The Newfoundland Hobbyist. The Newfoundland Hobbyist is sponsored by Mid-Island Motorsports, located in Springdale, Newfoundland. www.edgeproinc.com. By the Sea Inn and Cafe, located in Kings Point. And Outdoor Pros, located in Mount Pearl, Newfoundland. Welcome back to the workshop here, guys. As you can see, not a whole lot has changed, but today we're in for a new little project using only hand tools. I know a lot of you guys like the hand tools videos. I've talked a lot about them. Actually, I did a whole episode on that last season, I believe it was, talking about the beauty of traditional woodworking hand tools. And I'm not against or opposed to power tools. I have a lot of them and they certainly have their place. But when doing woodworking, just smaller, simple projects, there is such a beauty in just using traditional hand tools. Hand saws, hand planes, chisels, drilling with brace and bit. The beauty is, for one, the safety of it. For two, it's almost the peace and enjoyment. I have a table saw sitting over here, and to fire that up, you need a lot of PPE, a lot of personal protective equipment. It's just loud and obnoxious, and it's throwing dust everywhere, as opposed to just nice, quiet woodworking where you don't need any PPE really, and you can just enjoy your experience. Woodworking with hand tools only is also great for kids, where often you can't get a little kid running a table saw or a bandsaw or anything like that. You can give them a little block plane or a spoke shave. Even if you think they're responsible enough, they could even use a small chisel or something like that. Can't do that the same with power tools. So I've done a lot of collecting and restoring of old hand tools as well, and I've just got a big love for them. So if this is your first time tuning into the show, you'll see some of my collection here today. Before we get started here, we're going to be working on this timber frame workbench. If you've been watching past seasons, you would have seen us build this workbench, and this was a big project I took on with only hand tools, 5x5 timber frame legs, and I say it all the time, it is the best tool I have in the shop here, because a well-designed workbench built custom for you with some thought put into it absolutely is a tool. So first off, you can see that it's a freestanding bench, so we can walk right around it, which allows us to utilize the entirety of our bench. Also works awesome in this configuration for like I have my table saw built on a stand to be the exact height of the bench, so I can get full sheets of material up on here and roll off. I'm betting most of you can't do that with your like 2x4 bench against the wall, which is like kind of like a Newfoundland classic, a Newfoundland tradition. A freestanding bench like this, you can really utilize your bench for a lot of different things. Also, having it built to the exact height you want for working, for using a hand plane. So someone maybe 6+ feet tall, this bench would be a little bit short. They'd be a little bit crouched working out. Their hands would be a little bit low. I can stand up here and my hands just comfortably rest here. I can stand up straight and draw or work leather or whatever. But yeah, a beautiful bench like this with a good woodworking vise here as well. Man, it is so handy for all of your projects. So enough of me blabbering on about everything besides the project. What we're going to be making today is a small wooden box, a sliding top box. And I find a little box like this is so useful for so many things. Storage in the garage, a nice little jewelry box in the house, a little box for your kid to put their some toys in, or you can upscale it so many different sizes and do the exact same things. A couple things to note: we won't be using any metal fasteners, screws, nails, anything like that. So just all wooden joinery, just very simple joinery. Some wood glue is what we're putting together, and a very minimal amount of materials here. I'll just talk you through the design right quick. So before we look at the pattern, I'll give you a little bit of context here. I just finished up this beautiful custom bushcraft knife. This is like an all-around woods hunting, camping type knife, and I just think it's beautiful. Hand-stitched leather sheath. Let's give you a look at the actual knife here. See, we have a mirror polished blade, saber grind. So this was a custom order from in on the east coast of Newfoundland. Very happy to have gotten this order. I used a beautiful dark dyed curly maple handle, stabilized wood, solid brass pins. This is a beautiful, beautiful knife. It's not sharpened yet, so that's why I'm handling it a little more loosely. But I just finished up this knife, and it was a wife ordering it for her husband for their anniversary. I don't recall what number anniversary. Maybe she told me, maybe she didn't. But she wanted to order the knife, but she was also wondering if I could make a custom wooden box. She wanted to give it to him in like a nice little wooden box. So that is the idea behind the box we're making here today. It's just so it helps get your mind in the game, because you can see once we look at the paper there, the dimensions are quite small. Okay, so here are the few main dimensions. We're going to have an inside width of 3 inches and an inside length of 11.5 inches. So our bottom here, this is our bottom, it's going to be made of pine. It's going to be rabbited all the way around for our wood sides and ends to fit down in that. Since we're not using metal fasteners, we don't just want a one surface glue contact. If we can have a rabbet like this here, then that wood can glue on the bottom surface and on the side surface there. So we'll show you how to do that a little later. And we're going to have a couple small sides, pine end, and I'm hoping to use cherry here for this side. This is going to be a sliding lid box, which is, in my opinion, the easiest. If you're not trying to use or purchase any metal fasteners or anything like that, then a sliding lid is a really, really great idea. So I believe I just changed my mind. I'm going to use all pine for it instead, since I have a lot more pine material, and I have this beautiful clear piece here to use. So what I'm going to do is just start marking out a few dimensions now, rough dimensions. We're not ripping this down on the table saw, we have to cut it out by hand. So always give yourself a little extra material when you're working with hand tools like that. So our sides are going to be 2.5 inches deep, that's our sides, so I'm going to give 2 5/8. Now that I have a few lines marked out, I can make use of that beautiful bench, that nice hefty weight, and the bench vise to cut my piece here. So this piece of material right here is what will make the 2 sides of the box. Now for the sides and the ends, I don't want it to be too big and chunky, because I don't like that look, that big, thick, chunky, full dimension material. It just looks like someone didn't quite try hard enough. So I'm going to mill this down. Now if you have a thickness planer, which I do have access to, you could run this through. I'm going to take this down with a hand plane today, which is going to be a bit more work, or a bit more labor intensive, I should say. Shouldn't take too long, but here's where a good bench can really be an asset to you. So my bench is full of dog holes here. They're called dog holes. This is not my design, but they run directly down from the vise. So they're in groups of 2 here. And what you can do is, a proper woodworking vise like this has a steel dog, that's what it's called here, that raises up. Now with a small piece like this, I need to use a little bridge between the bench dogs down here, but I can clamp this piece in lengthways on my bench, and it's still supported by the bench. So for planing here, this is how you want to do it, and you want a piece here that's lower than your material, so you can plane right off the end. You're not bumping your plane into anything. Same goes back here. Just a beautiful system to be able to do that with a bench like that. Now I need to plane this 3/4 material. This is just standard 3/4 pine down to a 1/2 inch. So I need to take a full 1/4 inch of material off of that. Now I want to show you a little cool tool here. This is a Veritas marking wheel gauge. So Veritas is a brand. It's called a marking wheel gauge. You can get a lot of different variations of these, but this is an exquisite one. This is just beautiful. Brass, steel. Got a beautiful full round cutting blade there. What you have is a cutter on the end here. You have a steel rod that has all little markings up to 6 inches. It can go a little bit longer than that, but 6 inches is what it's rated for. And then this piece here slides back and forth on this rod. I've gotten it tightened down there now to a 1/2 inch measurement. But once you have it set, you plant this face up against your board like this. You want to sink that blade down into the wood, and then you can slide along and make your mark. I'm not sure if you can see that there on the camera. Yeah, you can, right there. So we have a perfect 1/2 inch measurement, and it's only blade thickness, so you can really get accurate with this. So it can especially come in handy when you're doing something like doing a lot of wooden joinery or something, and you just want to uniformly mark everything, and it becomes quite easy to do, quite fast. Just beautiful. What an awesome tool. Works nice for wooden joinery, or if you're doing like mortise and tenon, you can set this in to the depth of your bottomed mortise, and then you pull it out and you have the exact measurement for your tenon to mark around. So how cool is that? Really awesome product I got from leevalley.com if you want to check it out for yourself. So it might take a few passes to get this set up right. I'm going to set my blade nice and deep. Looks like I'm going against the grain right there, but let me back off my blade a little bit. This is a number 5 jack plane. You can see the size of the chips it's taken off there. Nice and thick. This shouldn't take too long at all. I'm going to take a bag here and clean up some of those nice big clean shavings, because I have an idea. I'm thinking they might be nice. Not all the little bits of sawdust and stuff, but those nice big shavings might be a nice bid to lay that knife down into in the box. I think that might look pretty. If it does look poor when we give it a try, we can just throw them out, no big deal. These are also beautiful for lighting the fire, as some of you guys can imagine. Some of you guys that have wood heat in your homes, these paper thin dry pine shavings, man, they burn like crazy. Okay, now here's the box that I've trimmed to exact dimensions here now, length and width, and now the bottom is going to get the rabbet all the way around. Our end pieces here will go down into the rabbet and be the full width, so this will drop down a full 1/2 inch right into there, and then our sides will go down into the rabbet and be kept by the end pieces as well. You can put little dowels in there if you want, but I don't think we're going to. So this is what we're going to do. We've got to cut that rabbet. Now you can do this a few ways. If you have lots of power tools, you could, well, if you have a dado blade on the table saw, you could easily just trim that out in one shot, set up for a 1/2 inch dado, and way to go. If you just have a normal table saw blade, you could just run that first cut and chisel out the outside piece. Would be very easy, or just do multiple cuts on the table saw until you got into a 1/2 inch. That would be easy to do as well, because the table saw blade takes a 1/2 inch or 1/8 of an inch at a time, no problem. We're going to stick with the hand tools, and if you only have hand tools, you could do it with just a chisel. I've done it like that before. Utility knife, just score as deep as you can, and then remove that with the chisel, and keep going and keep going. I'm going to use, I have a record here. This is a record number 778. This is a combination type plane, so it does a few different things, but the main thing it does is cut dados, as we're about to do, or rabbits, sorry. Some people call it a rebate plane. A rebate plane, I believe, is in the UK, and we would call it a rabbit plane here, because this plane was made in England. This is a vintage, a beautiful plane.
The Newfoundland Hobbyist is sponsored by paulsfinest.com. Noble's Timber Mart, with locations in Springdale and Baie Verte.
wildmedkits.ca, Robinson's General Store, located in Middle Arm, and ABS Busing, also located in Middle Arm, Newfoundland.
So like I said, we need to cut a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch deep. So a 1/2 inch like cube of material here. You can see I have that line scored. What this plane allows you to do is set for that 1/2 inch deep, 1/2 inch depth, lateral depth. And then we have a cross grain cutter here, which is a beautiful thing. And then our normal plane blade, which you can see in through there. So that cross grain cutter, what happens is if you were to cut a cross grain like this, without that, it wouldn't be able to cut the surface here. So it would just be prying those fibers up out of there. With the cross grain blade, I can back draw like this to start. And you can see it's cut a nice deep trench there. Just going to give it a couple back draws. Now when I make that forward push, it can cut away that material, as you can see there. And I can just throw that material out of there with each stroke. It'll just keep cutting. Okay, now our bottom is completely done. You see that we had that beautiful rabbet all the way around there with just roughly 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch lip left on there. I've scribed 2 lines here. All we need to do is keep this plane inside these lines, which gets a little easier after your first few cuts because you have a sidewall. These first few cuts can be a little bit tricky. One thing that's interesting about this plane versus other types of planes is that with each cut you've bottomed out your plane, so you need to adjust your blade out a little bit farther. So there's a lot of adjusting with this type of plane. Now is glue up time, and I can't say that I've ever found a real good glue up routine. It's always just a mess and me in a panic trying to get everything together and square before the glue starts sticking, or wonder if I have too much glue in there or not enough. Now through a bit of movie magic you guys get to come back the next day and see it all glued up, which I had to sit here and wait for the glue to dry. Now we do have some overhanging pieces. Everything wasn't cut just perfect. So what we can do now is clamp it in our woodworking vise here. Just take the plane and plane all the surfaces down together. So if you have 2 surfaces stuck together like this and there's a little overhang, you just plane everything down nice and flat. And if anything's a little bit out of square or something like that, this is a time to correct that as well. So you can kind of manipulate everything a little bit and tailor it just like you want. So we're going to do that first before we get to making that sliding top. Now after planing everything down flush, I am going to sand mine with some 180 grit paper. If I had a good set of card scrapers, perhaps I wouldn't, but I don't have a good set of card scrapers, and I want this to be a real nice smooth finish. Don't want any plane marks or anything like that, so the box is starting to look a lot better at this point. Now I'm real happy with how this is turning out so far. We have a nice smooth clean bottom. You see, you don't see anything there. Everything's all beautifully flush now all the way around. Super solid. we made sure to clean it up nice inside before we glued it together. So that's looking beautiful there. Now it's time for our top. So now I can mark this down to 5/16, and I don't want to mill this material off to this line. If we do that all the way around, then it shouldn't be too hard to get a nice, make sure we're nice and level and everything is come down uniformly. Now with hand tool woodworking, it's all about trying to figure out how to do a job most efficiently, because you don't have those ripping fast power tools. My mind is wondering, since we have more waste material to be removed than we have material to be left, I'm wondering if I can actually rip off most of that with a saw. Wouldn't that be nice? And then just have to plane a little bit down. So I've got lots of leeway here. I can even stay a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch away from my line. Just give it a try. Gotta have a perfectly, because this is a fairly long cut, so we need to make sure we're perfectly straight. Okay, now for fitting this top, I have most of it done, so I milled it down to close to the thickness we wanted, and then I had to start taking out the sides, or taking in the sides, sorry. So you need to have a perfect flush back face here for testing, and then it's just a matter of keep milling with a hand plane, little bit by little bit, until you get the fit you want. So right now, you can see it squeezes all the way in, tons of friction, will never come out, but we have a nice, perfect line here. And now all our cutting, fitting, designing, and cobbling up is done. And hopefully you have a box that you're happy with. I'm pretty happy with this one. There are a few things I'd change probably in the future, but now we're at my favorite part, which is adding a little bit of oil to the project. And that really makes the wood kind of come alive a little bit, look a little more rich. Woodworking is a hobby that I really enjoy, and I've been dabbling in it since I was just a little kid up in Pop's garage, and he used to let me play around on the scroll saw or with a hammer and nails and that type of thing. I've come a little way since then, not too far, but it's definitely something I enjoy. Every time I get to woodwork, it's always a treat. Hand tool woodworking like this is such a relaxing hobby, and it's something you don't need a lot of space or money to do. Materials are cheap, a piece of pine is so cheap, and you can build so much with it and just really kind of have fun with it. And it's definitely a beautiful hobby to get into. My skills, like I said, aren't top notch, and I haven't been woodworking for a little while, so I even found myself a little bit rusty at this project. That's kind of what happens though with your hobbies sometimes, is you move on to new hobbies, or you push some aside because you're busy and you'll lose a few skills, but that's okay. They can always come back with a little effort. That is it for another project, our handcrafted pine box that's going to store this custom knife. I really hope that the owner, customer here, is happy. I know I'm happy with the results. To me it looks really beautiful, elegant. The box is nice and simple, so it doesn't overpower the knife. The knife is still the star of this project. I'm really happy with it. I hope you guys learned something in this project. Like I said, this is a small little box,
but you can build this exact same box, this exact same design, and scale it up however big you want it. This would be beautiful for tool storage. I've built a couple of these now to store some of my combination planes that are really odd shapes, so they need kind of their own storage place. This is great for that type of thing, or like I said, to make a jewelry box or something. I hope you learned something. I hope you learn that this can be done, projects like this, with very minimal tooling. Even some of the tools that I use here, like the router plane and some of the specialty tools, I use them more for fun. I didn't need to use them. I gave you ways that you could have got around it and did the same work with cheaper and more basic tools. So I hope you pulled that from this video. At minimum, I hope you were entertained. Thank you guys for watching. I want to give a huge shout out to my sponsors. If you guys can, go ahead and support my sponsors. They really help me produce this show. That's it for this week. Make sure you tune in to the next episode of the Newfoundland Hobbyist.